Not really, I said. We're wondering, after the end of an imperial affliction. I disavow everything in that putrid novel. Van Houten said, cutting me off. No, I said. Excuse me? No, that is not acceptable, I said. I understand that the story ends mid-narrative because Anna dies or becomes too sick to continue. But you said you'd tell us what happens to everybody. And that's why we're here. And I need you to tell me. Van Houten sighed. After another drink, he said, very well. Whose story do you seek? Anna's mom, the Dutch tulip man, Sisyphus the hamster, just what happens to everyone. Van Houten closed his eyes and puffed his cheeks as he exhaled, then looked up at the exposed wooden beams cross-crossing the ceiling. The hamster, he said after a while. The hamster gets adopted by Christine, who was one of Anna's mom pre-sickness friends. That made sense. That made sense. Christine and Anna played with Sisyphus in a few scenes. He is adopted by Christine and lives for a couple years after the end of the novel and dies peacefully in his hamster sleep. Now we were getting somewhere. Great, I said. Great. Okay, so the Dutch tulip man, is he a con man? Do he and Anna's mom get married? Van Houten was still staring at the ceiling beams. He took a drink. The glass was almost empty again. Little by, I can't do it, I can't. He leveled his gaze to me. Nothing happens to the Dutch tulip man. He isn't a con man or not a con man. He's God. He is an obvious and unambiguous metaphorical representation of God. And asking what becomes of him is the intellectual equivalent of asking what becomes of the disembodied eyes of Dr. T.J. Akerberg in Gatsby. Dewey and Anna's mom get married? We are speaking of a novel, dear child, not some historical enterprise. Right. But you should, but surely you must have thought about what happens to them. As characters. Independent of their metaphorical meanings or whatever. They're fictions, he said, tapping his glass again. Nothing happens to them. You said you'd tell me. I insisted. I reminded myself to be assertive. I needed to keep his adult attention on my questions. Perhaps, but I was under the misguided impression that you were incapable of transatlantic travel. I was trying to provide you some comfort, I suppose, which I should know better than to attempt. But to be perfectly frank, this childish idea that the author of the novel has some special insight into the characters in the novel, it's ridiculous. That novel was composed of stretches on a page, dear. The characters inhabiting it have no life outside of those scratches. What happened to them? They all ceased to exist the moment the novel ended. No, I said. I pushed myself up off the couch. No, I understand that. But it's impossible not to imagine a future for them. You are the most qualified person to imagine that future. Something happened to Anna's mother. She either got married or didn't. She either moved to Holland with the Dutch tulip man or didn't. She either had more kids or didn't. I need to know what happens to her. Van Houten pursed his lips. I regret that I cannot indulge your childish whims, but I refuse to pity you in the manner to which you are well accustomed. I don't want your pity, I said. Like all sick children, he answered dispassionately. You say you don't want pity, but your very existence depends upon it. Peter, Levi said. But he continued as he reclined there, his words getting rounder in his drunken mouth. Sick children inevitably become arrested. You are fated to live out your days as the child you were when diagnosed. The child who believes there is life after a novel ends. And we, as adults, we pity this, so we pay for your treatment. for your oxygen machines. We give you food and water, though you are unlikely to live long enough. Peter! Levi shouted. You are a side effect, Van Houten continued, of an evolutionary process that cares little for individual life. You are a failed experiment in mutation. I resign, Levi shouted. There were tears in her eyes, but I wasn't angry. He was looking for the most horrible way to tell the truth. But of course I already knew the truth. I'd had years of staring at ceilings from my bathroom to the ICU, and so I'd long ago found the most horrible ways to imagine my own illness. I stepped toward them. Listen, douchepanch, I said. You're not gonna tell me anything about disease I don't already know. I need one and only one thing from you before I walk out of your life forever. What happens to Anna's mother? He raised his flabby chins vaguely toward me and shrugged his shoulders. I can no more tell you what happens to her than I can tell you what becomes of Proust narrator or Holden Caulfield's sister or Huckleberry Finn after he lights out for the territories. Bullshit! That's bullshit. Just tell me, make something up. No, and I will thank you not to curse in my house. It isn't becoming of a lady. I still wasn't angry, exactly, but I was very focused on getting the thing I'd been promised. Something inside me welled up, and I reached down and smacked the swollen hand that held the glass of scotch. What remained of the scotch splashed across the vast expanse of his face, the glass bouncing off his nose and then spinning ballistically through the air, landing with a shattering crash on the ancient hardwood floors.